You're watching Hot Walk Academy. My name is Mingjin Tong. Today we are making a squid and shrimp stir fry over pan fried noodles. It's a classic, this rich gravy sauce over really crispy deep fried noodles. I hope you'll get these ingredients, cook along with me. I want to help you master your kitchen. Let's cook. All right, so for our ingredients, this is what we need. We will start off with some canola oil, and this will be for stir frying before we add our seafood and our veggies. Of course, I've got my coarse sea salt here. I do have some cornstarch, and with this cornstarch, I'm going to be making a slurry, and we'll add that into the end of our stir fry. So hold on to that, don't mix that yet. Of course, we'll just use some water for that as well. For our aromatics, I've got yellow onion here. Yellow onion is fantastic, full of flavor. We're gonna let it not be overcooked. We'll cook it pretty lightly here. And then I've got my garlic, and that of course will go into my oil before we introduce our snow peas. These snow peas are just fantastic. They go really, really well, and you find them often at a Chinese restaurant with your seafood dishes. And I've got some shrimp, already cleaned, deveined, peeled, ready to go. And I have 2 squid peels that we'll be cutting into rings, and we'll use that as well. So let's go ahead and prepare our aromatics. For our onion, the very first thing is we're gonna cut them along the bias. So just a quick anatomy lesson on your onion. The onion grows this direction, and this is the stem that was coming up. And of course, here's the root ball, which means all of the fibers of the onion grow this way. That's how the nutrients are traveling from the earth up into the stem. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut that stem part off. And with the flat part down, I'm gonna run my knife right down through the bias of the onion. And you know, for this, I'm not gonna be dicing, so it's okay if I cut off the root end and compost that. I'll cut the root end off here as well and compost that. It'll be super easy to peel from here. Maybe I spoke too early. Nope, I didn't. Here we go. Let's go ahead and get rid of that here. And we'll do the same on this one. Now, again, there's 2 ways you could be cutting this. What I want is I want some crescents. Why do I want that particular shape? Because especially in Chinese cooking, we like our food to have the same general shape. So you see the shrimp is curved this way. When I cut the squid peel, it will be a nice circle. And again, we have a bit of that same curvature with our snow pea. So I want my onion, if I have a decision on how the food looks, I want the onion to match harmoniously with the rest of the food. So from here, I'm gonna take my knife, and again, this is the way that the fibers are growing. You can actually see the fibers of the onion right there. If I hold it the other way, you can also see that the fibers are growing top to bottom. So I'm gonna cut and bring my knife down the same direction. So here we go. Always keep your knife hand nice and dry. I always wear a towel in my apron, very important, because I want my hands to be dry for safety. So I've got a knife hand, I've got a food hand, and what we're gonna do is fingernails down, and we're gonna cut not too thin because we don't want them to cook too quickly, my onion. And you know, when I begin to have no more room to hold my onion, what I like to do is I like to tilt my onion down over, and I can finish slicing it from there. One more time, fingernails down, and we'll slice that onion, again, not too thin because I don't want to lose some of that texture. Flip it on its side, and we will finish that. Okay, so all of our onion is ready to go. We will do our garlic next. Garlic is gonna be used to flavor our oil. Garlic, of course, grows in a bowl. We don't want the whole thing. And we're just gonna take a couple of these cloves off. Oh, that's tougher than it looks. Here we go. All right, I've got it here. I've got 3 nice fat cloves to work with. Take off some of that paper, and let's go ahead and pat it. And that makes it super easy to peel. We'll take the garlic paper off of all 3 of these here. And This is gonna cook down a little bit. We're gonna fry this up a little bit more. So I'm not too concerned so much about the shape here. I'm just gonna kind of rough cut them as we go. Got one piece of paper and they'll get rid of that. All right, let's clean my knife, and I will use my knife as a bench scraper. And there is my garlic. Got one piece of onion. I'll just switch it out over there, and we'll put that over here. All right, the next part is a little bit of handwork. With these snow peas, they all have kind of a hard fiber that grows in. And what you want to do is just take your fingernail and hold on to the end of that, and you can peel it and break it off, and we'll pull that string. And I'm going to do that to all of it. But we'll jump to the end when they're all finished. Okay, after you're done with all your snow peas, I just want to talk a little bit about our noodles. These are 鸡蛋面, egg noodles, and this is a popular kind of a noodle, especially in Hong Kong, not so much in Taiwan. And these noodles are nice and thin, and they have an amazing texture. What we're gonna do is we are gonna boil them until they are QQ, the right toothsome. That's how we describe it in Taiwanese words, a toothsome feel for your noodles. But after we cook them, we're gonna pull them out, thoroughly drain them, and then we are gonna deep fry them. So I'll show you that in just a minute. For our shrimp and for our squid, you know, I learned this technique from a Chef Tang. He's a Chinese chef that was here in the Twin Cities. I had the opportunity to work with him a few years ago, and he always said, you know, before you prepare your shrimp, you just put a little bit of salt in them, and you just want to mix that up. And you know what, Chef Tang, if you're watching this, please put in the comments below why you do that. I don't know why you do that, but I always do it now because of you. And same thing with our squid peel. Let me just rinse my hand off real quick. With our squid peel, I also want to do the same. Just take some of that salt and sprinkle it on the squid, and we'll get that kind of mixed around. For our shrimp, they are already deveined, which means they have been slightly butterflied already, which means I'm not actually going to butterfly them anymore. I think that a shrimp in this way is going to work just fine for us. For our squid, we want the size of the squid to be roughly the same as the thickness of the shrimp. So if the shrimp is this wide, in essence, I want each ring of my squid to be about the same size. And this is already cleaned and ready to go. So we're gonna cut rings right about that same size, and make sure you're cutting all the way through. And each of your squid rings should be about the same size. Let me just hold one up so you can see. Yep, that is just gonna cook up beautifully. Okay, once your squid is done, we are ready to make our stir fry and deep fry our noodle, so let's get going. Once your prep is done, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna cook your noodles, boil them until they are QQ, that, or another word might be al dente, right? Toothsome. And so what I've done here, these noodles, again, these are the egg noodles that are popular in Hong Kong. And let me just take one out to show you the way that it looks when it comes. It's like a little nest. It's just fantastic. And I've got 5 of these that I've boiled already, and they are just sitting here. I'm gonna pull them out right now. They're ready to go. So 5 might be too many, but I wanted you to see, we're gonna go ahead and pull all of these out. And what we wanna do is we wanna go ahead and strain them. We don't want any liquid. Liquid is the enemy of oil. And if you have liquid going into your oil, it's gonna have a lot of fireworks. So what you wanna do is I'm gonna go ahead and put it in this basket. I really, really love these net baskets. They've got these great wire supports. Get yourself a set. At my local Asian market, if you're in the Twin Cities, Dragon Stars where I got these, you can get a set of 5 for only 15 bucks. So great, great deal. And here's what I'm doing. I'm actually going to be shaking these, and it's not mainly to get the water dripping. You'll see there's not a lot of water dripping out. It's for the steaming. I want all those noodles to actually steam out because I don't want a lot of liquid in my noodles when I am gonna deep fry them. So I'll get it as good as I can. Let's see if I can shake some out there on the bottom. Okay, this next part takes a little bit of skill and it's a little bit of heat. So what you want to do is you're going to want to lower all of these noodles into your oil. So this is my deep fry oil. I do have a thermometer in there and it's reading right now about 360 degrees, which is going to be just perfect for me. It's going to fry pretty quickly, but what's going to happen? If I hold these noodles and put them into the oil by hand, what's going to happen is all of that liquid that's still in the noodle turns into water vapor and my hand will soon be in a great deal of pain. So when you do this, always use a tool. Never use your hand to lower in those noodles, just to save yourself a world of hurt. So I think, frankly, that's a little bit too much noodles. So what I'll do is I'll probably divide that in half. And let me show you the quantity here. Oh yeah, look at those long noodles. Long noodles, long life, we say in Chinese. All right, that is about good. And that is a nice dry texture on those noodles. So that amount of noodles is gonna go now into the deep fry. And again, it's at 360 degrees. Let me just check the temperature one more time. Yep, it's actually at 380. A little bit high, but it'll be okay. You'll notice my flame is off. That's perfectly fine because the oil itself is still very, very hot. I'm gonna go ahead and take all these noodles and I'll lower them in nice and slowly into the oil. If I put them in too fast, it will make a loud and very bubbly result. So for now, I'm just kind of letting it go slowly. Again, my hand is not in the steam. Otherwise, I'd be in a lot of pain right now. We're gonna let that go just for a little bit. What's gonna happen is the oil is gonna fry that essentially into a nest. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my strainer and I'm gonna pick that whole nest up and set it back into my plate. I can tell by the texture that right now it's still a little bit soft. I'm gonna let them fry to get even more crispy. And what's gonna happen is when the gravy of my seafood noodles goes in, it's gonna re-soften that noodle. It'll just be fantastic. Let's see how they're doing. I'm gonna go ahead and use my strainer. I'm gonna shape that noodle to make sure it fits in my bowl when it comes out. It's still soft in the middle. It's still bubbling. The bubbling tells me that the water vapor is still evaporating. If you put something completely dry in your oil, there's very little bubbling that takes place. And now I can see my noodles have, the bubbling is almost gone, which means that my nest is pretty much done. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that out and look at how beautiful it is. That is a nest of fried noodles that will be perfect for when we put our seafood stir fry on top. Once you have your pan-fried noodles done and they're in your bowl, we're gonna use that as our landing dish for the rest of the stir fry. So here we go. This is how we do the stir fry. I've got my cast iron wok, or excuse me, my carbon steel wok here, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn that fire up. However, this time, I'm not gonna use a high heat. There's nothing here that really requires a high heat. So on a medium heat, I'm gonna go ahead and take my canola oil, and let's go ahead and do probably about that much oil. That looks to be about 1/3 of a cup there. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna warm that up. First thing that's gonna go in is our garlic, and that's to flavor the oil. Then we're gonna throw in our onion and our snow peas and let those cook. And finally, we will add in our seafood and our slurry. So I might actually crank the heat just a little bit to get me going. Let that oil swirl around. First thing we're gonna do is introduce our garlic. It's got a great sizzle there. I don't want that to burn, but I do want that to flavor my oil quite a bit. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce my onions now at the same time. And I'm gonna use the edge of my ladle just to break that up. And we're gonna let that stir fry. Here what we're doing is we are cooking the onion and we are adding flavor to the oil. Also at this point, I think it's a good time to add a little bit of salt. Now, generally, when I'm doing stir fry, I like to use a pretty high heat. Why am I not doing that this time? This time, I actually want to cook everything quite gently. I don't want to overcook any of it. And I want my shrimp and my squid to remain nice and tender. If you cook them at a high heat, they're gonna get very, what we say in Chinese, lao, old or hard in texture. And we really don't want that. So a nice gentle stir fry this time for our garlic and our onion, but I do want to make sure it cooks all the way through before I add any of my other ingredients. I'll give just a little bit more heat. When your onions begin to get translucent, but they're still holding their shape, that's a good time to add your snow peas because we don't want the onions to overcook. So here's all of our snow peas. And let's give that a toss. Because I have now so much cold product in my pan, guess what? I can actually crank my heat to high because it's gonna be able to retain or be able to maintain a low temperature in the pan because I have so much product in there. The high heat is not gonna hurt it. Let's go ahead and give that a toss. I really value these veggies being nice and crisp. So when I'm cooking it like this, I don't want to overcook it. I do want to cook it fast, but I got to keep in mind, I'm going to be introducing my shrimp and my squid in there, which is it's going to cook the other ingredients. The longer it's in the pan, the more it's going to cook. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and make some whey. Turn my heat back down just a little bit. And let's go ahead and add the shrimp as well as that squid. And just a nice gentle cooking is gonna do it. I don't need to turn the heat up high. Over time, it will cook very nice and evenly. It's a good time to add more salt. And let's give it a toss. I'm gonna go and give it a little more heat because it's cooking a little slower than I'd like. With seafood, you really gotta be careful. You don't wanna overcook your product. You don't want your shrimp to be hard. You don't want your squid, especially, to be chewy, like a rubber band, right? You want it to be nice and tender even when it's all done being cooked. So we're really gonna pay attention to that. As the seafood gets done and gets cooked, I'm looking forward now to adding my slurry. My slurry is a mixture of cornstarch with water. And when I add that in, it's gonna create a very nice gravy. And that gravy is gonna do two things. Number one, it's gonna create a great liquid that will go well with the pan-fried noodle, but number two, it's gonna capture all the flavors from our onion and our garlic and our seafood, and it's gonna put it into that soup. It's gonna be a great way to move the flavor and make it shared among all the ingredients. All right, my shrimp is starting to get nice and pink, and so is my squid rings are starting to cook all the way through. So I'm gonna turn the heat down while I create my slurry. For my slurry, I've got here 1 1/4 cup of water, and I'm gonna add some of my cornstarch to that. So I'll add 1 spoon and probably a 1/2 spoon, just like that. You don't want it to be too thick because you don't want to make a paste. You only want to make, again, a wet slurry to go in there. And then this is actually going to serve now as a way to boil the seafood. So again, it's almost done cooking. I'm going to get my heat all the way high, give that a stir. Crispy vegetables, tender seafood, and now let's add our slurry to that. Actually, I'll pour it on the back here. All right. With all that liquid in there, I can crank my heat and leave it on high. And now it's going to boil. As soon as it's done boiling, we will be able to plate it. At first, when the slurry goes in, it is quite liquidy, but what you'll see is that the cornstarch will begin to thicken the entire mixture. And also, the reason I'm using this particular ladle is because the ladle is great for handling liquid. It's always important to taste as you go. I'm gonna go ahead and try some of my bean sprout, or excuse me, my snow pea, to make sure that the texture or the taste is correct, that the salt level is correct. Wonderful. Still crispy, however, not enough salt. So let's go ahead and get some more salt going in there. And that is pretty much done. Let's go ahead and shut the fire. I'm gonna go ahead and keep mixing it around to let that salt be get mixed around here. Look at that wonderful gravy that's down there. All that liquid is gonna go so well with those crispy fried noodles. And I'll just try one more for the salt level. Just a little more salt. Okay, and then before we plate it, one last thing we want to add is our white pepper. This white pepper will add such an amazing flavor at the end. Let's go ahead and spoon it on. And pepper tends to fatigue quite quickly. The flavor and the effect of pepper goes away if you cook it too long. That's why I'm adding it at the end for minimal cook time. One more time, I'll just give it a stir. Oh, the smell of that is amazing. That white pepper from Taiwan is unreal. All right, and let's go ahead and plate that. Right onto our nest. of fried noodles. I hope you have enjoyed watching, and I hope you've cooked along. Try these recipes at home, continue learning in your ability to cook. Thanks so much for watching.